You know, this cultural war that we're going through in the United States right now is just eerily similar to the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And it's really indicative of what people are capable of when they put their ideological litmus tests to the absolute limits of their power. When, as Milton Friedman noted, the most dangerous person is the man who wields power and is absolutely convinced of the purity of his intentions. This is also indicative of what happens when you are able to rally the amiable minds of young men and women across a nation. And the Wikipedia article is pretty comprehensive. It's a pretty comprehensive history, so I'll read it, and I'll play you all a clip of an old documentary covering what Mao called the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. Tell me if this doesn't sound familiar. The Cultural Revolution, formerly the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, was a socio-political movement that took place in China from 1966 until 1976. Set into motion by Mao Zedong, then chairman of the Communist Party of China, its stated goal was to preserve true communist ideology in the country by purging remnants of capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society, and to reimpose Maoist thought as the dominant ideology within the party. The revolution marked the return of Mao Zedong to a position of power after the Great Leap Forward. The movement paralyzed China politically and negatively affected the country's economy and society to a significant degree. The revolution was launched in May 1966 after Mao alleged that bourgeois elements had infiltrated the government and society at large, aiming to restore capitalism. To eliminate his rivals within the Communist Party, Mao insisted that these revisionists be removed through violent class struggle. China's youth responded to Mao's appeal by forming Red Guard groups around the country. The movement spread into the military, urban workers, and the Communist Party leadership itself. It resulted in widespread factional struggles in all walks of life. In the top leadership, it led to a mass purge of senior officials, most notably Liu Zhaqi and Deng Xiaoping. During the same period, Mao's personality cult grew to immense proportions. Millions of people were persecuted in the violent struggles that ensued across the country and suffered a wide range of abuses, including public humiliation, arbitrary imprisonment, torture, hard labor, sustained harassment, seizure of property, and sometimes execution. A large segment of the population was forcibly displaced, most notably the transfer of urban youth to rural regions during the Down to the Countryside movement. Historical relics and artifacts were destroyed. Cultural and religious sites were ransacked. Mao officially declared the Cultural Revolution to have ended in 1969, but its active phase lasted until the death of the military leader Lin Biao in 1971. After Mao's death and the arrest of the Gang of Four in 1976, reformers led by Deng Xiaoping gradually began to dismantle the Maoist policies associated with the Cultural Revolution. In 1981, the party declared that the Cultural Revolution was, quote, responsible for the most severe setback and the heaviest losses suffered by the party, the country, and the people since the founding of the People's Republic. But don't take Wikipedia's word for it. Look at this clip from a documentary from back in the 1980s.
But Mao was biding his time. He worried his revolution was going off the boil. He saw a privileged bureaucratic class emerging, as had happened in the Soviet Union. He feared the return of capitalism and materialist incentives. He believed China's chance to have a perfect socialist society was passing. Mao's supporters printed a book of quotations from his political speeches and writing, and used them as the basis for a new attack on what was called the capitalist road. We still have to wage a protracted struggle against bourgeois and petty bourgeois ideology, said Mao. As he tried to regain power, Mao used a piece of spectacular political showmanship to revive his reputation. To demonstrate his continuing vigor, at the age of 72, he led a mass swim across the river Yangtze. Trying to break the thinking and attitudes of old China, he began with her traditional culture. The 1,000-year-old Beijing Opera was singled out as the start of his attack. If it could be changed, then anything could be. 8 new revolutionary plays were written to replace all the old stories of emperors and concubines. Tung Shangling, who once played princes, now took the lead as an officer in the People's Army.
我能拿到了这个角色，由我来演。
I was chosen to play this revolutionary role, and it was a great honor.
很光荣。 我们是灵魂的工程师，我们有一种。
As artists, we were engineers of human souls.
为赚钱吃饭，或者是简单的工作，而且我们有一种责任
We
感。
didn't just perform to earn money, but had a serious responsibility to re-educate people.
一定的教育作用。我们非常幸福。
We were so happy that Chairman Mao was creatively involved in this opera.
By late 1966, the great proletarian cultural revolution was well underway. The group behind it, led by Mao's wife, and later to be called the Gang of Four, tried to build the Mao cult to new heights. In school, children recited his message to them. The pupils came to realize that all the changes taking place in their families, at school, in Shanghai and China were brought about by Chairman Mao. Students were used to carry the Cultural Revolution forward. For the first time, young people were encouraged to attack authority and the old hierarchy of the party. And the advice came from Mao himself. Bombard the headquarters, he said. To rebel is justified. One of the Beijing students who were the first to call themselves Red Guards was Zhang Baoqing.
Chairman Mao started the Cultural Revolution to keep up the momentum for change. Everything he said was right. We thought if we follow Mao, we can't go wrong. Only he can lead us from one victory to another.
A succession of huge rallies were held in Tiananmen Square. The master of mass mobilization had shown he could still draw a political response directly from the people. This time it wasn't the peasants in the country who did his bidding. The most educated and energetic generation in China were following his every word. The students felt excited and liberated as never before. An estimated 11 million Red Guards came to see Mao. The rising fervor was directed at Mao's rivals, including President Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping. Banners attacked Liu. Even small children were taught to denounce Liu. The rage was extended to foreign governments, with attacks on Western diplomats in Beijing. Almost anyone who was in power of any kind was denounced as a capitalist roader. The whole structure of the party was brought down, including Zhong Guodong, the district secretary in Tiananmen.
In all the
previous campaigns, I'd been singling people out and telling them their mistakes. I was the one who found fault with them. I didn't expect the tables to be turned on me this time round. Some of the biggest high school students who were very loyal to Chairman Mao pressed my head down, twisted both my hands behind my back, and made me bend over throughout the denunciation meeting. I didn't think I'd survive.
In Sichuan, Luo Shifa, the party secretary who'd helped his village through the famine, was denounced.
I didn't expect the Cultural Revolution would affect me. Why should it? I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, and always had the support of the people. At the denunciation meeting, they slapped my face and forced me to kneel down. Kneeling on hot charcoal and broken glass was almost a daily routine. So what I did was to put a soft pad inside my trousers, and that made it easier when I was forced to my knees.
In schools, pupils attacked their teachers.
Our headmaster had been really good to us, but even he couldn't escape. We didn't hate him personally, but he represented bourgeois values, so we had to attack him. We dragged our headmaster onto the school stage, then students put a dunce's cap on his head and a big placard around his neck. The more extreme we were, the more loyal we felt to Chairman Mao.
In Shanghai, the teacher who had taught her class to love Mao was now accused of being disloyal. There were several hundred Red Guards wearing armbands. Others had military belts. Some had scissors in their hands ready to cut people's hair. They chopped off my hair and beat me with sticks. They ordered me to produce the Red Book and to recite that revolution means rebellion and violence. That day I was wearing a white shirt without pockets, so I wasn't carrying the Red Book with me. They said, if you're not carrying the Red Book, that means you aren't loyal to Chairman Mao. How dare you say you love Chairman Mao? You deserve to be overthrown. It was December in Shanghai and very cold. They ordered me to stand outside in the playground from morning till night. But then they thought the punishment wasn't severe enough. So they got a big blackboard and pressed it down on me.
One of them stood on the right side, and one on the left, like a seesaw, and I was squashed in the middle. They wanted to knock me down and keep me down forever.
Xiao Ailing was left with permanent injuries to her face. Up to 1 million were killed or driven to suicide. The country was now in the grip of a revolutionary mania that became more and more violent and destructive. The Red Guards attacked the four olds: old habits, old ideas, old customs, old culture. Books were burnt and museums pillaged. Soon, rival factions of Red Guards fought one another.
We used clubs and guns. Many were beaten until they bled, others died. But we all felt we were the true defenders of Chairman Mao's revolution. To die for the great leader was an honor.
The anarchy spread. Schools and hospitals closed. Offices and factories were in chaos. The attempt at a state of continuous revolution was impossible to keep up. People craved the return of a more normal, stable life. After 2 years, the army had to be called in to end the factional fighting, restore order, and help to re-establish the party's authority. And the Red Guards were sent to the countryside to cool off and learn from the peasants.
Interesting. Mao conditioned the college students. Isn't that just eerie? They targeted educators. What does that remind you of? They targeted individuals who just years prior were the champions and rhetoricians of Maoism. They were iconoclasts. They destroyed ancient and historical relics representing the history of China. Fascinating. They viewed old China as heretical because it was representative of immoral values and ideologies of the past. Is this sounding familiar? Multiple factions attempting to achieve the same ends. They targeted political dissidents and the opponents of their ideologies, even though just years before, those people they targeted were dogmatically preaching the very things which would eventually oppress them. What does this sound like? We don't have to let this happen. We absolutely don't have to let this happen. These people were responsible for the death of tens of millions of people. They were responsible for exacerbating a personality cult who knowingly perpetuated human rights violations and mass murder. These alt-left and alt-right lunatics have to be stopped. It is our duty to put an end to this nonsense for the sake of democracy, for the sake of the Republic, for the sake of Western civilization. The social justice war is over. The cultural war is just beginning. So I suppose now is as good a time as ever to let you all know I'm starting a new channel which will serve as my main channel. I'm going to keep this one to shitpost and make a few political shorts. Plus I'm a huge college football fan and a big soccer fan as well, and I'd really like to do some alternate coverage on my views on those topics. Also, I received a thought crime strike by YouTube on my last video, which they took down and I'm in the process of fighting. My new channel is going to be called Orwell's Ghost, with all of my follow-on accounts corresponding, or at least in some fashion. Frankly, it just rolls off the tongue better. I'll leave a link in the description, and my first video will be covering, you guessed it, Charlottesville and the rise of the two hyper-political factions. And I'm going to keep you up to date on what I'm reading. I think this is going to be a new feature of Orwell's Ghost, and the books that I'm reading right now, well, I just came off of vacation, and the books that I was reading while I was on vacation were Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman, The Social Contract by de Tocqueville, The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek, and Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. So that's going to be a new feature, and it's going to be important because a lot of the stuff that I'm going to cover in my next video is going to have to do with The Road to Serfdom. Thanks for the comments and support, and to whoever of you are sharing the link to my last video about Politicon, because it's received over 2,500 views and growing, and it actually makes it more viewed than all of my other videos combined. And I'm guessing it's partly because of my last video, which was a meme playing a jihadist song over the video of those knuckleheads in Durham who tore down that Civil War statue. Anyhow, again, I just like to thank everyone for the support, and I encourage you to subscribe to my new channel. Thanks, and take care.